Hi there, Brenda.
Hi, Brenda.
Hi.
Thanks for doing this. So I am going to, so just remember when you're not presenting to turn off your mic and your video camera, and then just put it on, and then you can see where to share screen. So I think everybody knows. Jennifer, are you on?
Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Yes. All right, perfect. I can hear you well. Kavya, you want to do a sound check just to make sure?
Me?
Yep, perfect. Brenda?
Awesome. Can you hear me?
Yep, perfect. Okay,
All
I
right.
can hear everybody perfectly well then. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is the TCU Strategies for Democratizing Data and Creating a Culture of Evidence. It is the third session in the TCU track at the Data Summit this year. I'm Cindy Lopez. I'm the Director of Tribal College and University Programs at ATD, and I will be the session moderator as well as a presenter today. Next slide. Great. So the session objectives today are to increase everyone's understanding of data democratization, learn what early momentum metrics TCUs are using, and learn where there's consistency and variation in the definition for the metrics, and learn how peers are democratizing data and obtain resources to support this process at your institution. Next. These are today's presenters, including myself, my colleague, Jennifer Hill-Kelly. She's a holistic student support coach, as well as a data coach, a TCU data coach. Kavya Sri Mariboina, institutional research and data analyst at Little Priest Tribal College, and Brenda Clore from administrative assistant at Bay Mills College. So a special appreciation and thanks to our two TCU presenters today. Here's an overview of the session agenda. Keep going. Next slide. Great. So I want to start by just talking about how student success is everyone's job, right? Everyone's responsibility on campus. So everyone needs to take action, needs access to information so that they are able to take action, right? So that's one of the main reason that this data democratization is so important. It's so people can do something with that information. So for evidence-based programs, stakeholder engagement, systemic improvement, equity, data should be at the forefront, right? So these core areas here are the core areas for transformational change, and all of them have something to do with data. Next slide. So here's the definition of data democratization. So again, that everyone has access to data. There are no gatekeepers that create bottlenecks at the gateway to data. It requires that we accompany the access with an easy way for people to understand the data. So as important to having access to the data is being able to understand that. And sometimes that requires, different strategies with different people, right? Just like learning in any circumstance may require different strategies with different groups. The idea is, again, they have access to be able to act on the data. So there should be no barriers to this. And this includes qualitative data, not just quantitative data. Next slide. So does your institution use data systematically? So this is the big question. So it's one thing to be able to produce data. It's another thing to be able to analyze data, but it's quite another to use it systematically, right? And that's the key aim, right? That's where the transformational change comes, when you're using it in many ways to inform decisions, and you're using it on a regular basis. So that's the question to ask yourself. And then, do you have a data plan, which defines which data should be seen by whom and how often, right? That's a very important component to using data systematically. And I like this picture here in this quote that, a goal without a plan is just a wish. And it's so true. You can just cross your fingers and hope it happens, but really a plan, which, helps you kind of with accountability to be accountable to yourselves, right? Is helpful in using data. Next slide. So I'm not going to go over this very much. Many of you have participated in other sessions or have reviewed this with your data coaches. What are leading and lagging indicators, right? So I would say it's most important to get leading indicators. Lagging are important for the whole institution, but it's definitely important to get leading indicators into the hands of change makers so that they can move forward with these indicators and take action. Next slide. So then this slide is just, again, more definition as to what a leading indicator is versus a lagging indicator. Most key performance indicators at institutions are lagging indicators, which means that, you can't do anything about them anymore, right? So the idea is to incorporate in the metrics that you are following and analyzing as many leading indicators as possible. Next slide. So, again, more questions to ask yourself. Faculty are on the front lines of, supporting students and having the biggest impact on their learning, right? So the first question is, how often and when do faculty see leading indicators? Again, not the, traditional lagging indicators such as, percentage of students who, fall to fall retention or students who complete in 3 years or students who complete in 6 years. We want to get, closer to home to what they're doing on a semester to semester basis, right? So they can actually take some action so that students don't stop out. When and how often do student service and staff, including advisors, see leading indicators? I know for some institutions, your staff are faculty are faculty advisors. In other cases, it's separated. But again, how often do they see data so that they can take action? And then when do cross-functional groups meet to look at data together, especially leading indicators, and to have these important discussions? Next slide. So then, again, leading indicators, early momentum metrics can be leading indicators. So the question that, one question that's really important is, how many of you are including early momentum metrics in your indicators, in your key performance indicators? So next slide. So again, here are some of the early momentum metrics. And I want to highlight, there's one important early momentum metrics that's seems to be missing here, and that's 0 credits completed in the first term. So you can see on the left, credit momentum, on the right, gateway course momentum, persistence momentum. So all of these are important metrics that give key information to key individuals so that they can help improve the student experience and prevent student stopouts. All right, so what I want to say about this is in September, TCU submitted their annual reflections to ATD, which allowed you to look back at the goals you had established at the beginning of Project Success and evaluate your progress. 6 tribal colleges, the ones in the Holistic Student Support grant, submitted action evaluation plans, which also included KPIs. So many of you submitted with the annual report, the KPI report, which was one of the deliverables under Project Success 2.0. In this report, you submitted between 5 and 11 key performance indicators the institution is using to assess progress in improving student success. The idea is to assist TCUs to be selective and systematic about collecting, monitoring, and using key metrics to help improve student outcomes. This will also help with accreditation and other types of reporting. ATD recommended that tribal colleges and universities include at least 2 early momentum metrics in their key performance indicators, and even made a suggestion regarding which ones all TCUs might use to facilitate in order to facilitate TCU benchmarking. So of the 23 TCUs that already submitted key performance indicators, 16 included early momentum metrics. So the information on this chart that I'm showing you right now just is based on the 16 institutions that included early momentum metrics. So the table includes a summary of which fall term and first year early momentum metrics TCUs indicated that they are monitoring. So some TCUs also indicated that they're using year 2 metrics, but in what I'm going to show you is just for fall term, which is first term, and end of first year. So as you can see, and before I move on, I want to thank ATD coach Donna Jovanovich for aggregating this information and pulling together a summary document with information that you can access in the conference Dropbox, which I'm going to show you what that looks like in a minute, which includes this information. So you don't need to be taking down this information. You're going to have it all in one document. The summary document also, like I said, includes the second year metrics. And I've invited Donna to chat any other additional information that I don't mention here that could be useful to you. So as you can see in the table, where there's most consistency in the use of early momentum metrics is in the use of ratio to credits earned versus credits completed, credits attempted, and there are 16 TCUs using this. And then in the metric number, number and percentage of students completing college math in year 1, so which has 18, right? So those are where we see most of the 23 that turned in metrics that are using, and those are the ones that are highlighted in yellow that ATD had recommended that all TCUs could use so they can benchmark against, against each other. And these are indicators, and Bobby, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I see you here in the room, that are available within the PDP, right? So you would, these would be automatically calculated in the PDP, which we also saw yesterday in the presentation with Lisa Stitch from the PDP. And then from there, you can see there's a lot of variety. A lot of TCUs are using several other early momentum metrics. So one thing I wanted to do was highlight credit accumulation here. So you don't have very many TCUs using the 0 credit accumulation, or 6 credits or 12 credits, which are also early momentum metrics. And so, I think a lot of people didn't include those because it's not data that they're collecting right now, right? And that's important to understand. It wasn't ever assumed that you were collecting all of this anyway. Rather, it's future looking, right? So I also want to present this, on credit accumulation if that's something you're interested in looking at, percentage and number of students that complete 0 credits in the first term, which is a really important metric, right? You want to know how many you're losing and find out how many and find out why, right? Which might require doing some focus group and some qualitative assessment. That's something that you can work on with your coaches, right? That's why you have data coaches, and looking forward, they can help you figure out how to collect that data and analyze it. Is there anything there, Jennifer, you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to build upon what you're sharing with us, Cindy, and talk to the TCUs. Part of this assessment work that we've looked at what you've told us, and hopefully we can start a conversation about maybe some particular subject areas that you'd like to work on, like credit accumulation. So Cindy and I have been talking about how do we take what we heard from you all and build both content and maybe some webinars. Maybe we can do some group coaching with a smaller group of TCUs that are interested in particular subject areas. So we wanted to kind of put that out there for you all to think about as you go through this week. We'll continue to have the conversation about where we can support you, what topics you're interested in, because we have lots of opportunity. We have a deep bench in the coaching, the data coach folks that we can draw upon to help us build both content and specific, maybe some targeted small communities from this work. So I just wanted to mention that as we continue the conversation. Thanks, Cindy.
Yeah, great. So next slide. So these are some other early momentum metrics, again, that TCUs are collecting data on, again, fall term, first year. And so like Jennifer said, we're trying to see where there's interest in understanding some of these better. I want to emphasize the point that Bobby made yesterday that early momentum metrics are really important. They have a lot of predictability in terms of student completion in 6 years. They've been, the correlation is high in these in helping students complete. Next slide. Well, I was going to leave this. We'll go back one real quick. I can mention it here. So participation rate and orientation, that's not necessarily an early momentum metric, but you can call it an early momentum metric, right? So certainly student behavior are important leading indicators, and you can work on those with your coaches too. Next slide. Okay, so this is what the document looks like. It is in the Dropbox, and it gives you pretty much the information I just showed you, as well as the second year information, which is on the right. And again, I want to thank Donna Jovanovic. She's a TCU coach, an ATD TCU coach, for putting this together, so everybody can kind of see where there's a lot of consistency and where there's more variation in use of early momentum metrics. I do want to mention that TCU's turned in a lot more metrics than that. You can stay on this slide. That turned in a lot more metrics than what I showed, right? Some turned in, lots of different institutional metrics and even definitions for different things. So thank you. Again, I think the important thing here is to really narrow down which you want to use related to student success, right? Which ones do you want to use on a regular basis for determining how students are doing? So the other thing that TCU's turned in, many had turned in, were data definitions for EMMs, right? So what definitions were they using? Because it's really important to have consistency in the definitions that you're using each time you turn data in to the NSC, just like you all have standard definitions, data definitions for AHEC. You also want to be consistent in the formulas that you're using when you submit data to the National Student Clearinghouse, because of course that will, and then also I think it's interesting to try to come up with some commonality, right, among TCUs on definitions reporting to clearinghouse if you want to be comparing apples to apples when you're benchmarking using the PDP to benchmark against other tribal colleges, right? So what we've done is we reviewed all of the definitions for early momentum metrics that were submitted to us, and I'm going to highlight where we see a lot of consistency and where we see you know, some variation. So the first one here is ratio of credits earned versus credit attempted. So pretty much people used the sample definition that we gave them. So we did provide an example data dictionary for EMMs, and most, I would say most TCUs adopted those. Where we see variations is some used C grade or higher, and others used C minus. Now, you know, that seems like a minor point, but you know, if you have staff turnover and somebody new comes in, or somebody that's not from higher ed, you know, comes in and is helping to input data, it's important to, you know, have a consistent definition, what you really want. So the majority of TCUs have C minus or higher, but again, there were a few that had just C. So that's something to consider. And again, you want apples to apples comparison when you're, you know, benchmarking against other colleges. So one or two definitions also included that this excludes developmental courses, right? The ratio of credits versus, and often that's because they are not graded. They don't receive, sorry, they're graded, but they don't receive credit for them. So, or sometimes you do receive credit for them. But I do think it's important to include any doesn't include or does include in the definition, right? And that's important. I know there in some states, you know, there are community colleges that the data that they publish, et cetera, and collect for the entire state is only students that earn 6 or more credits or take 6 or more credits at the college, because they think that that is the group that is, you know, more degree earning, or for whatever reason. California is one of those. If you look at the definition online of who they include, it's, you know, students taking 6 credits or more. Other states, other institutions, it's all students, right? So it's important if you have any exclusions or inclusions, specific inclusions, that those are highlighted there. The other thing that we noted on this one, and we noted on other ones, is that many TCUs just said use of percentage, right? So it's percentage of all credits completed with C or better, and it doesn't include the number. Honestly, it's better to include both, because percentages, especially at very small institutions, can fluctuate a lot, right? So it's good to look at both. Next slide. Okay, so I'll go quickly over these. Complete college level math in year 1. So one thing that we had here that was a little bit of a variation was the use of AHEX. You know, some used the FTIC, some used FT, you know, SC. So there was a little bit of a variation on what the definition of the cohort was. And again, that's important because, you know, you want to be comparing apples to apples, you know, once you get, you know, using your National Student Clearinghouse data. And then the same thing, you know, in one case it excludes the, you know, number and percentage in the definition. And then again, we have the situation of just saying C or higher versus C minus or higher in some of the definitions. So again, trying to be as consistent across the board. So again, I'm not going to detail all of these, but here where we see some differences, again, varying in terms of fall cohort students. You're going to have this PowerPoint presentation. It's available in the Dropbox, so you can kind of see where we saw these Next slide. So here is one that we saw a difference is some use the term retain year 1, year 2 versus persistent and interchange the use of persistence and retain. So I think that that's important to just make sure, again, when you're submitting to National Student Clearinghouse, what exactly what formula you're using, regardless of what you call it. And maybe, again, when you're submitting to AHEC, you call it one thing. When you're submitting to National Student Clearinghouse, it's something different. And maybe over time, those definitions will merge. The other thing is, there's a little bit of a difference in if it was first time in college only, or if people were measuring all students, right, that were there in the fall, and say fall of one year, if they were there in the fall of next year. So the idea here is that the cohort is first time in college, right? So you separate, so you really know how the new students who came in are doing, but there's where there's a little bit of discrepancy in the definition. And again, those are two very different groups, right? So your first time in college is going to be a much smaller group than the entire cohort, the entire enrollment, entire group of students that are there this semester. So that's an important nuance that, there needs to be some decisions and consistency on, and, for benchmarking. Okay, same thing, issue of the cohort and varying definition. Next slide. Here's the definition. I believe it's the one that we had provided. Sorry, go back real quick. It was the one that we had provided, which many people use, but again, there are these varying definitions. Okay, we can say on this slide. So I wanted to show this. This is something that United Tribes Technical College put together, and I actually asked permission to use this today, which, they are showing here in that they have different definitions, right? For the cohorts, the first time cohorts, depending on who they're reporting to. So, that's the way they're able to make sure that there's consistency in data reporting too, is that everybody knows to go back to this definition depending on who they're reporting to. So anyway, that can be helpful for institutions also. And so you can see that for the National Student Clearinghouse here, they're using the first time ever in college, right, definition versus the first time student versus first time freshman student. So it might be helpful for all institutions to have something like that. And actually the AHEC definition, I guess, the AHEC, column was on there too, but somehow it's not showing. Okay, next slide. Next slide. So just again, showing some of what they're not showing, but we can go to the next slide. Just trying to give you an overview for the different indicators, what we saw. Again, here, this definition includes those who completed the entire sequence in the first term, when the actual definition is completed developed math sequence in year 1. So, there's where we saw a little bit of, using the year 1 definition, but using it for the, but specifying that it's for the first term. So again, the first term is usually refers to their first semester at the college. So those are important nuances to work out, again, for the apples to apples comparison, looking at NSC data. You can go to the next one. I've already mentioned the point about percentage, also adding numbers versus in addition to percentage. And now I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Jennifer Hill-Kelly. This is a very, one of the things that I mentioned is that faculty are one of the most important groups to get data in front of. And so we're going to give you an idea of how to do that, because they are the ones that can really help students, being there on the front lines with them. Jennifer?
All right, thanks, Cindy. So yeah, this is an example from the Equity Walk book that just kind of illustrates course completion data. The example is by race, and I know that that is maybe not as relevant. So if you click progress the slide there, I put some other things that may be more contextualized to maybe some areas that you want to look at, different populations of your student groups. The point of the graph is really, if you look along the top there, it talks about the course enrollments, of course, and then who completed successfully. You would define that however you define success. It has percentages. It shows the benchmark, the 62.9% that is the highest performing group, and then it shows the percentage gap. But what I like about this example is it shows the actual number of course completions needed to close the gap. So you can dig into kind of your course completion rates to pull out this information. And then if you progress the slide, it gives an example of how you can visualize this data and share it to start the conversation about where you might want to focus a discussion about specific courses. So here, this is a basic math course. It has the total number of course enrollments, and then it shows in the bubbles the different courses and then the size of the equity gap compared to the highest performing group. So we see that Math 101, we need 120 additional course completions to close the gap. So you might want to say, let's take a look at Math 101 and have some discussion around what maybe the faculty see in that course, what their experiences are, what are the activities where we can help students find more success in that course. So we just wanted to share that as a quick example of how we have these data conversations in a broader setting. So with that, next slide, I think we are going to hear from our guest speakers from the Tribal College. So I'm going to turn it over to, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to pronounce your name
that's
correctly.
Okay,
I apologize.
That's okay, Jennifer.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Hope you guys are all doing good. I'm Kavyashree Mariboina, and I am working as an institutional research and data analyst at Little Prairie Tribal College in Nebraska. As Cindy explained, how data democratization is important to make accessible data to everyone, and that helps us to take data-informed decision. So today I just wanted to talk about how data visualization helps to succeed the data democratization. So let me give a few details about our college. Little Prairie Tribal College is located in Winnebago, Nebraska, with an enrollment ranging typically around 150 to 200 students per semester. We are enrolled in basketball athletic program. That's one of our main interests, but due to COVID, things have been a little bit slowed down for a bit for now. And ATD coaches, Dr. Bobby Fry and Omero Soares are our ATD coaches. To be precise, we never had an IR position before ATD, but after interacting with Achieving the Dream, our coaches helped us to establish an IR position in our college and directed us how data culture of evidence plays an important role in progressing our student success. So I really thank our coaches right now for directing us in a right direction. So today I'm going to talk about a tool called Tableau. I know a lot of community colleges and other universities use different tools for the data visualization, but I'm going to talk about Tableau, which is an emerging tool for visual analytics. Before talking about the dashboards, in the Tableau, how it looks like, I want everyone in this session to think of two different questions that should raise in your mind. The first one is, what is data visualization, and how is it important for data democratization? So every person tends to feel more attentive when they look at a visual picture rather than looking at a raw data. So if we show a lot of tables to a non-data person, he or she might find difficulty to look at the data and analyze what's going on. In the other way, if you show it as in the picture, it's going to be really easy to analyze. Oh, this is what's happening when you see a picture. So I think it's really important to attract people when we show the data in the form of a visuals. So it gives us a clear insight of what's happening in our college, so that we can start taking discussions and take data informed decisions. Next slide, please. So Tableau is a data visualization software where you can connect any data sources to it. Like you can collect Excel sheets, cloud-based data sources, and databases like SQL and Monto. And you can connect any type of data source, and it helps us to create the instantaneous visualizations, which are really amazing. So today I'm going to show our recent summer 2020 data, which shows 3 key features on it. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the key features that we would be discussing is the fact books. So after every semester, we kind of create a fact book to see how our demographics looks like, how our students are performing, so that it would create an idea of what's going on in our college and makes it accessible to our faculty and staff to have a kind of discussion to see what they are thinking of, and so that we can discuss our pros and cons that are going in our college. And this is something that was really important in this COVID times, because many things have been changed due to the COVID, and I would like to show those things to you guys. And the other thing is the course fact sheet, which is redirected to our faculty to see their course success and failure rates. So with that, I would like to see our dashboards and see how they're gonna look like. So can you guys see my screen? Just making sure.
Yes, we can see it.
Awesome. So this is our Little Priest Tribal College fact book for summer 2020. As you can see, there are tabs on the top page where you have different tabs to see the data, which are disaggregated into different variables. So I'm gonna focus mainly on the enrollment and credit summary. This is one of our KPI indicator, which is the credit ratio. So we had 92 students who are enrolled in our summer 2020. 455 credits were taken by the students, and only 231 credits were completed by them. So the credit ratio is kind of really low, which is 50% when compared to other semesters. And the main reason we thought would be the COVID, because the COVID is something that we weren't expecting to happen. The drop down was really, really high because everything we moved to an online environment. So students kind of faced a kind of little bit problem in completing their credits completion on time. So this is something we are looking into and see how we can help students so that our credit ratio increases in a bit for the fall semester. So in the same way, if you want to break down the data into according to your requirements, you have the filters. These are the filters that most of our faculty and staff uses. So we have a gender filter where you can see, if I want to know the female students who are enrolled, I can, it just pops up saying that it gives you total female students were 78 enrolled and the credits taken by them and the credit ratio, everything like that. If I want to see based on their racial background, I can just go there and see whatever I wanted to have and click that, so that it gives us the breakdown of every information. So it makes us easy to the people whoever is looking at, so that they need not to come to an IR person to ask for the data, because most of the data is available in the fact sheet itself. And then you have the geographic origin. It says from which state of the US most of our students are coming from. This is kind of something which attracts people when they look into the data, saying that, oh wow, this looks amazing when you have a lot of colors and stuff. So most of our students are coming from Nebraska. So mostly 73% of our students are from Nebraska, and remaining, and some of the people are coming from remaining states, other states too. And as Cindy explained, it's good to have both numbers and percentages, because being a small college, numbers changes a lot in the form of percentages. So it's good to have numbers as well as percentages, so that it tells what's actually happening. When we see at the percentages, we come to different conclusions, but when we actually look into numbers, there comes another idea or opinion to see what's going on. And then we have city distribution to see from which of major cities our students are coming from. And then we have gender distribution. Most of our most of our students are female, so 85% of our students contains females population, and 15% are of male population. Even if you want to cut down into different variables, you can just go to the filters and use them. Let me go into the GPA distribution. This is something that we were seriously looking into, and how a non-data person can look into this screen. If I, for example, if I suppose I'm a non-data person and look into this data, I exactly see some kind of round balls over there where the red zone is highlighting. As a result, we can just look at the data and see the red zone with a GPA of 0 to 0.4 is kind of highlighting where most of our students land into that zone. Almost 45% of our people are with a GPA of 0 to 0.4 for the summer semester. This is something as a kind of a serious issue to look into. And when we had a discussion with all the staff and faculty and our president and our VP of academic affairs, we were not expecting that. Yeah, we thought COVID could do some difficulties in our students' progress, but this is kind of a serious issue to look into. By seeing that, we thought it would be really good to reach out to our students and see what exactly they are going into. So if you can look at the data, the most of our female students are coming into this place, because they might be having different issues, because everything is moved into online courses and everything is kind of disaggregated, and they might be having some Wi-Fi issues to complete their classes, online classes, to complete their submissions, to complete their assignments and stuff. So our student services department came into the picture and started to conclude an early alert program to maintain a strong online implementation, so that we can help our students on the online tutoring and help them to complete their assignments and projects. In this way, we are hoping to see the numbers low in the next fall semester and see how well it's going to do. This is how a visual helps to attract people and make them to look into the data and see how well they are looking into the data and have their opinions open word. And then I'm like to go to the zero credits earned. This is something, this is one of the KPI indicators that we are using. And I think this is something that every institution should use, because this tells us how our students are exactly doing in our college. This is something a serious issue. So the red zone represents the students who earned the zero credits, and the green zone represents students who earn more than zero credits. So 45% of our students are earning earned zero credits in the summer semester, which is kind of little bit depressing when we see this data, that we weren't expecting that to look like this. But it's something, when you look into this data, you will get an idea of why this is happening and what steps can be taken to avoid this kind of situation. So I think KPI indicators are really effective to look into the KPI indicators and see where your college or where your institution is standing at, so that you can start discussing it with your panel or data team or the student support services team, and see what measures can be taken to improve them. And to be precise, the visualization helps us a lot to catch the main points and discuss about with the non-data persons, because I think only the IR persons are totally into the data side, where the other departments have their respective duties and responsibilities, where they can't keep much time on looking onto the data. So it is important to make sure it is easy and effective to make accessible to people who are non-data persons, and make sure they understand the data in a perfect manner. So, and the other thing is the course and failure rates. This is only available to our faculty to look at their own courses, of how their per course success rates and failure rates are. So we have a course filter where we can select all the courses they wanted to have. For example, if I want to say the public speaking course, I would select the course and see how the grades are going. So this is how the grades are doing good in the public speaking course. So in such a way that you can see how grades in each course are performing. And then we have the success and failure rates with the instructor name, so that other instructors can see how the people in the other courses are doing. And we have the breakdown under gender, racial background, and the course name, and the Indian and non-Indian students. In precise, it's native and non-native students. I think that's how the data visualization helps in looking into the data for to increase our data democratization, and make sure these fact sheets, after completing, we would upload under our website, so that it is accessible to our faculty and staff and public, so that even if public wants to see our fact books, to have, sometimes we get the external request for the data thing, so it is available for our staff, faculty, and public. And then, Alina, can you please go back to the presentation, please? Yep. So conclusions from the dashboards: by observing the zero credits and the GPA distribution levels, those are the KPI, which we call the KPI indicators. We had the early alert program, which is the strong online tutoring thing. So, and we had a credit hour reduction by looking into the data. In before 2 years, we used to have 81 credits course for early childhood education, which made our students to take longer time to complete the coursework or the program. So by looking into that data, we decided that 81 credits for completing a program is really high. So we thought of decreasing it to 61 so that students can feel a little bit better for completion of their course. So this is how the visualization works, guys. When the data is made accessible to all the people come out with their opinions. It's easy to, if one person gets an opinion, but when you think a lot of people giving you a lot of opinions makes us to think a lot better and makes us to think to go in a right direction. I think I just wanted to tell you all the people to talk to your IR department to see how the data is going on, to see how the visualizations are going on. I'm sure you should have a data visualization dashboards or some kind of data analysis to make sure what's going on in your college and to make sure how data-driven decisions are made. And then next slide, please. So uses of data visualization, yeah, it actually helps us, it actually helps data and non-data persons to take data-informed decisions. On the other hand, the post-secondary data partnership uses Tableau to create these dashboards. It makes us consistent to use both the PDP and to use Tableau for our personal college purposes, because then we make the consistency in overall things. I think this is really important to have a data visualization so that it really helps us to democratize data to everyone and helps us to lead in a right direction. So the greatest value of data visualization is when it forces us to notice what we never expected to see. We would never expect anything until and unless we see the data. Data speaks us a lot.
Thank you, Kavya. That was terrific. And it's true, data always yields surprises. And that's why we say, you know, moving from anecdote to evidence.
Yep.
We are going to go ahead and continue on in the interest of time. But please, if you have any questions for Kavya, please put them in the chat box. And we can come back later and do Q&A for both Brenda and Kavya, depending on time, or she can also answer them directly in the chat box. So turning it over to you, Brenda.
And thanks. Do you have my slides up or should I share them?
You're up. Just tell her when she needs to go to the next slide.
So I want to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to present today. My name is Brenda Clore. I am the Administrative Assistant to the President's Office at Bay Mills Community College. Today I will be sharing an example of how we used data in the decision to compress our pre-college level English courses to encourage student persistence and to be successful during their time here with us at BMCC. Next slide, please. So as people who work with data on a regular basis, we know the level of information we pull from our data server is unmeasurable. But what do we do with that data once we have it? Move to the next one, please. So many of us pulled tons of information from servers like Empower or Genzabar, National Student Clearinghouse, Crystal Reports, the list goes on. As data people, we want to be sure to effectively share accurate information to help others around campus to make informed decisions. Visualizations put all that data into just a few clear pictures, and pictures are worth 1,000 words. So committees help us relay information across campus. The different bodies were established, each with a meaningful purpose to share ideas, examine best practices, and make decisions based on students' needs. Yeah. The Enrollment Management Committee is comprised of a variety of personnel campus-wide. This is an opportunity for members of all departments to meet monthly and share what they have been working on, provide updates on upcoming events, discuss ideas. There are also subcommittees who report to the larger committee, the Recruiting and Marketing Subcommittee, and the Persistence and Retention Subcommittee. Both subcommittees have established goals and objectives to encourage student success. The Curriculum Committee is comprised of all academic department chairs as voting members of the committee. They meet at least once per semester, and depending on the discussion topics, these meetings are usually attended by members of other departments to assist in the decision-making process. They remain informed regarding curricular changes and those changes made within the Department of Academics. Next slide, please. As I'm sure is the case with many TCUs, we have a number of incoming freshmen who are not always at the college level in math or English. However, we still want them to have a fair shot at being successful. Having to complete an entire series of pre-college courses can be really discouraging and may lead to some stopping out or dropping out of gatekeeper courses. The following is a snapshot of our series completion rate for pre-college level math and English courses. In the fall of 2018, we began implementing In the fall of 2018, we began implementing the Carnegie Math Program. Prior to its inception, students could end up with as many as 3 pre-college math courses. Placement in these courses is based on students' admissions test scores or ACT/SAT scores. The Carnegie Math Program allows for students to combine those courses into one while still getting the level of help they need. Conclusion of the spring 2020 semester, the other pre-college math courses have been phased out, and we have seen success in students completing their pre-college math and having the skills to move on to being college ready. The data has shown that since the transition to the Carnegie Math Program, the 3-course series completion rate has improved from 31.8% to 70.6%. The 2-course series completion rate has improved from 54.7% to 71.8%. So we took a look at past data that showed our students who placed in the pre-college English were not successfully completing the series. This could also be a 3-course series with an academic enrichment course and 2 intro courses, or a 1 to 2 course series. It's possible for students to test into either intro course based on placement testing, hence the 1 to 2 course series. Again, placement is based on students' admissions test scores or ACT/SAT scores. We took a closer look at the completion rates over a 3 academic year period. Students who placed in the 3-course series, their completion rate was 15%, whereas the completion rate for students in the 1 to 2 course series was 54.2%. With just over 27% of our incoming freshmen starting English below college level, how are we going to narrow the gap to increase their success rate and encourage them to persist? Next slide, please. The success of the Carnegie Math Program led us to wonder if a similar approach could be implemented in the case with the English program. Following the discussion with the Curriculum Committee, the members of the English department went to work on compressing the English series while maintaining the same level of learning. The department worked together to develop a curriculum to eliminate the academic enrichment course. As an alternative, a lab was created to accompany the first Intro to College Writing course, which is designed to help students learn strategies and overcome knowledge and skills gaps to prepare them for the next level of college writing. This fall is the first semester the lab is being offered, and we will continue, as we do with all courses, to track the data and examine the effectiveness. Next slide, please. So thank you for your time and opportunity to present today. I'll be available if anybody has any further questions or comments. By the way, this is a lake view picture of our campus. It was taken last week.
Terrific. Thank you, Brenda, very much. Impressive. I put it in the chat, but very impressive percentage point increase for math. We hope it increases as much for English. Now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jennifer Hill Kelly, to talk a little bit about the data and technology capacity planning tool that we have been using with the TCUs starting this semester.
Thank you, Cindy. Go ahead and progress the slide. So, this go round of project success, we implemented a project management tool. We're calling it the Data Technology Capacity Planning Tool. And really the purpose of it is to help you and your data coach plan the work ahead over this next couple years. And, you know, as we kind of looked at the responses we got, you know, again, I was talking to Cindy, and there's a lot of potential for specific data topic webinars or maybe some small group coaching that I want to raise as we go through this today, and then see if there's interest, and then how we might implement this. So just a reminder, the ratings was from 0 to 4, and 0 is the lowest rating. It's not a priority for your institution over the next 3 years, up to number 4, which was the process has been institutionalized. Next slide. So what we found from the responses, we had 18 responses, and these are just some averages just to give you some context. Again, everybody's on their own data journey. This is really our benchmark for the work that we're doing together. I just show you the highest average rating of 1 TCU to the lowest rating, and then an average overall. Again, these things in aggregate don't mean much. If we go to the next slide, please. I want to get into the areas of specific categories. Again, these are from the ICAT, the Institutional Capacity Assessment Tool, related to data and technology. So these here were the 3 data factors with the highest ratings from all of the TCUs that responded. So the first one is really about student success technologies. They've been implemented, they're being used. I think there was a great example of the use of Tableau. Those things are happening all throughout the TCUs. So the second one was how you're integrating multiple platforms. So you're with your SIS, working with Tableau or with early alert systems. Those things are also being implemented, as well as tracking implementation progress of all of the different things that you're working on. We know that ATD isn't the only thing that you all are involved in, and so the impact of pulling all of that information together, sharing it out, is occurring as well. So next slide. So these were the 2 factors that I wanted to highlight that had the lower ratings from TCUs. So the first one is really talking about leveraging data to it's really, to me, about leading indicators about our student outcomes so that we can get ahead and support students before they stop out or before they even start to struggle. So with this one, there were 8 TCUs that gave it a rating of 1, which says we would like to currently doing this. So to me, I'm wondering if folks are interested in, it would be volunteer, it would be optional, in specifically working on these data factors. The second one relates to the labor market in tying that and advising, as well as tracking what happens to students and what kind of jobs they get after they leave your institution. This one, there were 7 TCUs that rated this a 1, which says we would like to have this, but we're not currently working on this. So, and I want to do for a couple reasons, just to learn how best to support you all, and are interested in continuing the conversation about the best ways to do that. So with that, I also wanted to share a couple of resources in the remaining time we have, and then leave some time for questions as well. So next slide. So hopefully you have heard about this, the data decision-making guide that the data coaches pulled together. It's part of a whole toolkit. There are other pieces of it. It's linked here, and then a copy of it is in the Dropbox as well. And really broken up into what I think is particularly useful. You know, these are all questions that we're grappling with, of how to find out how our students were engaging in this, you know, time of COVID. And so it breaks it down to student learning, student supports, and enrollment management. And then it goes deeper into specific areas that are highlighted by the bullets. So it has some direction about how to look into how students engaged with academic supports as well as non-academic supports. It looked at faculty development and how to assess what your faculty need to promote student learning. So it has a lot. Next slide, please. And the way that it's laid out is very practical. It gives you practical directions. It lays out a research question. It talks about who the audience might be for this information. It has guiding questions to help you focus where you want to look. It gives you ideas of the data that you can consider to pull and to support the answering of these questions, as well as methods, the frequency. But the best part was kind of what to do with this information after you gather it, and how to bring it forward, whether it's to your ATD committee or to the broader administration, so that they can take action. So it's something I wanted to highlight and share as we continue to work with you. So there was a note in the chat that the resources aren't in the Dropbox yet, but we will get them in. So there are 2 ATD guides. There's the decision-making guide, as well as the equity insight metrics that just kind of shows how you can break down your student profile in different ways and how that might look. I put the data visualization checklist from Stephanie Evergreen and Ann are interested in data visualization. The gurus that I like to go to, and they have great websites with lots of resources. And then I also added a piece from Public Profit about creative ways to solicit feedback or stakeholder feedback virtually in this virtual setting we're in. And of course, our data discovery guide is always a good resource to go back to. If you have questions or you're looking for something, there are tons of links in that guide. So with that, we're getting down to the end of time, and I just want to take a moment. If we were in person, I would have done this in person, but I have to take a minute to acknowledge Cindy Lopez and her hard work. She advocates for the tribal colleges every day, and I just want to give a shout out for her and her efforts. So thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to her.
Thank you, Jennifer, very much. Thank you for those kind words. It's something I'm passionate about. So it's easy to love this work, and it's easy to want to do more all the time. I'm just showing very briefly the action plan framework that was provided in case you want to do this. If you'll remember at the beginning of the conference, they showed this. If you submit it, you can be in competition for an Amazon gift card. So for some people that that attend conferences. They like to document some of what they've learned, and here's a good way to document what you're learning or action steps, and you know, possibly put your hat in for possibly a prize. So I want to open it up to questions then right now real quick. If there are any additional questions for Jennifer, for me, for Kavya, for Brenda, we are here to answer them. We still have 7 minutes, so I want to take advantage of those 7 minutes. Just put them in the chat box. And if there aren't any questions, I think that you all know where to find all of us. So you can reach out to Kavya at Little Priest, Brenda Clore at Bay Mills Community College, Jennifer and myself at Achieving the Dream. We are always here to help support you. Again, back to Jennifer's offer, we are looking at ways to work with, you know, some smaller groups on things that are of specific interest to those groups. So we certainly welcome your ideas. We're using this data capacity tool as a way to gather some of those ideas. So anyway, wanted to emphasize that point again. Thank you all for being with us today. Thanks for your participation. Thank you again to each of the speakers for the time and effort you put in to share your experiences with the rest of the group. And I'm giving you about 6 minutes back of your time. Oh, wait, here, we do have a question for Brenda, so let's not cut. Brenda, how did you engage the different groups to lead the data discussions? Excellent question. Do you want to unmute? Brenda? All right, I think that for connectivity reasons, we may have lost our TCU speakers, but feel free. Oh, there we go. There's Kavya. She says, Jennifer, it takes a lot of time to maintain it updated every time. We do it semester-wise to update them. Okay. Great. Thank you, Kavya. All right, everyone, if there's no more questions, thank you again for being here. And thanks for all your great work and serving your students. Have a great afternoon.